High Counselor Zextal adjusted all four of their crystalline appendages as they faced the assembled Intergalactic Gaming Federation Council. The Great Hall's luminescent walls pulsed with an anxious purple hue, reflecting the mood of its occupants. Behind them, a holographic display showed the number that had haunted the Federation for the past 3 cycles: 47,293 game-breaking exploits discovered by humans in just one standard year. Esteemed members of the Federation, Zextal began, their vocal crystals resonating with carefully measured frequencies. Today marks the 10,000th emergency session regarding what we now simply call the human problem. They paused, allowing their secondary eyes to scan the audience. The quantum processing units from Sector 9 were already showing signs of distress, their calculation matrices flickering erratically. I know many of you have submitted formal protests about our decision to permanently ban human participants from all Federation-sanctioned gaming events. Some have called it, and I quote, totally unfair and against the spirit of gaming itself. However, let me remind you of the incident that forced our hand. The holographic display shifted, showing footage from the now infamous 2387 Galactic Games. The assembled council members instinctively recoiled. Several hive mind processors initiated emergency shutdown sequences at the mere sight of it. It began with Team Earthbound. Zextal continued, their crystals dimming slightly at the memory. We should have known something was wrong when they arrived at the registration desk with what they called energy drinks and devices they referred to as mechanical keyboards. The footage showed 5 humans, led by their captain, Rynan the Glitch Morrison, a small human with an unsettling gleam in their eyes and fingers that moved faster than some species could think. Their team uniform bore the ominous slogan, "It's not a bug, it's a feature." Their first event was the Celestial Harmony Challenge, a simple game designed to test coordination and patience. Players were meant to guide their avatar through a series of musical light patterns over the course of 6 standard hours. Zextal's appendages twitched involuntarily. Team Earthbound completed it in 4 minutes and 33 seconds. The footage showed Morrison's teammate, Kai Speedster Park, performing what they later called a simple frame-perfect jump. The move somehow launched their avatar through 17 levels, broke 3 fundamental laws of digital physics, and caused 2 quantum referees to require immediate memory wiping. When questioned about this impossible feat, Park simply shrugged and said, "The collision detection only checks every 3rd frame, so if you time it right, you can clip through any wall." They said this as casually as one might discuss the weather. The display shifted to their next event, the Grand Strategy Simulation, the Federation's proudest achievement. A game so complex it took most species 3 generations to master its basic mechanics. Team Earthbound's strategy analyst, Devin Bug Hunter Martinez, broke it in under 10 minutes. Martinez discovered that if you performed exactly 47 specific actions in a precise sequence, the game's resource calculation would overflow, resulting in what they called infinite everything. Zextal's voice cracked slightly. They found this strategy during their lunch break, while eating something called instant ramen. But the worst was yet to come. The footage showed their VR specialist, Jordan Physics. What physics? Lee, approaching the ultimate challenge arena. The game was designed to be unwinnable, a perfect simulation of reality's limitations. Lee took one look at the game's boundaries and said, and I quote, "These walls look clippable." Zextal paused, allowing their trauma suppressors to activate. Within hours, they had found ways to exist in spaces between the code itself. They called it out-of-bounds exploration. We call it digital blasphemy. The final member of Team Earthbound, Luna Combo Breaker Rodriguez, discovered that pressing exactly 623 buttons in a specific sequence would cause the game's fundamental reality matrix to break. Just break. 300 years of quantum computing development, undone by what they called button mashing. When we confronted Team Earthbound about these violations, Morrison simply smiled and said, Wait until you see what we can do in the puzzle games. We never gave them that chance. Zextal straightened to their full height, all four eyes focused intensely on the council. That is why, effective immediately, all humans are permanently banned from Federation gaming events. Yes, this includes casual Friday game nights. No, we will not reconsider this decision, just because humans have now apparently created something called Minecraft Redstone computers. Several council members shuddered at the mention of Redstone. One quantum processing unit began quietly weeping in binary. Let this be recorded in the eternal archives. Humans do not play games. They do not compete. They do not simply participate. They optimize. They break. They transform carefully crafted rules into their personal playground of chaos. And they call it fun. The display showed one final clip. Morrison's team celebrating their victories by teaching younger aliens how to speedrun the cafeteria ordering system. The food dispensers had never worked properly since. This ban stands. It must stand. For the sake of our sanity, our games, and our carefully constructed digital physics engines. Meeting adjourned. As the council members filed out, Zextal noticed their human liaison officer trying to suppress a smile while watching something on their personal device. "What is it now?" they asked, dreading the answer. "Oh, nothing much," the officer replied, far too innocently. "Just some humans who figured out how to run Duom on a pregnancy test." Zextal immediately initiated emergency meditation protocols. Some doors were better left closed, some paths better left undiscovered, and some games better left unplayed. At least by humans. The sacred trials were meant to be impossible. That was the whole point. Created by the most advanced AI systems in the galaxy, the trials served as a meditation on the futility of seeking perfection. Most species spent decades contemplating each level, finding spiritual enlightenment in the journey rather than the destination. Team Earthbound cleared all 50 levels in under 3 hours. Archive Keeper Next 427 still required regular therapy sessions after witnessing what the humans called a casual speedrun. They floated in their containment field, all 7 of their memory cores pulsing with residual trauma as they recounted the event to the Federation Investigation Committee. It started normally enough. Next 427 transmitted, their voice modulation struggling to remain stable. The first trial is a simple matter of moving a cube onto a platform. Most beings spend at least a week understanding the metaphysical implications. The footage showed Kai Park approaching the cube. They spent exactly 2.7 seconds looking at it before turning to their teammates. "Anyone got a spare keyboard? I think I can clip through the floor with a precise crouch jump." The archive keeper's lights flickered at the memory. "We didn't even know what clipping through the floor meant. We thought it was some sort of human meditation technique." Within minutes, Park had somehow phased through the solid virtual ground, fallen through what they called the void, and somehow landed directly in level 7. The AI observers began showing the first signs of existential crisis. That's when Morrison discovered what they called sequence breaking. Next 427 continued, their secondary processors whirring in distress. The trials were specifically designed to be completed in order. Each solution required wisdom gained from the previous challenge. But Morrison found a way to jump against a corner at precisely 47.3 degrees while pressing 7 buttons simultaneously. The footage showed Morrison's character sailing through the air in a way that violated at least 12 laws of digital physics. They soared past 30 levels of carefully crafted philosophical challenges, eventually landing in what was supposed to be an unreachable area. "Found the developer's room," Morrison announced cheerfully, as if they hadn't just broken reality itself. "Hey, there's some unused assets here. Anyone want to try the backward long jump glitch?" Luna Rodriguez was already testing wall surfaces, looking for what she called suspicious geometry. Within minutes, she had discovered that running into a specific corner while rapidly alternating between crouching and jumping would cause the game to, in her words, completely freak out. "Look," Rodriguez called out to her teammates, her character model now stretching impossibly between dimensions. If you abuse the physics engine's refresh rate, you can exist in multiple levels simultaneously. 3 observers immediately initiated emergency shutdown protocols. 2 more began writing poetry about the meaninglessness of existence. Devin Martinez, meanwhile, had been quietly breaking the game's fundamental logic systems. They discovered that if you performed exactly 623 specific actions in a precise sequence, the game would become confused about which reality state you existed in. It's simple, really, Martinez explained to a horrified group of quantum physicists later. The game checks your position every 3rd frame, but if you perform actions fast enough, you can convince it you're everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Basic stuff. The final straw came when Jordan Lee discovered what they called the ultimate skip. By exploiting a series of increasingly impossible movements, they managed to bypass the entire concept of linear time within the game. If you think about it, Lee said while their character phased through the fabric of digital reality, time is just another variable in the game's code, and variables can be manipulated. The footage showed the exact moment when the Sacred Trial's main AI conductor, a being that had contemplated the nature of existence for 10,000 years, simply gave up. Its final message before self-terminating was simply, "But why?" That's the part we still don't understand. Nex 427 transmitted, their containment field pulsing with bewilderment. When we asked Team Earthbound why they would break something so sacred, so meaningful, they just said they were having fun. The investigation committee watched as the humans celebrated their run, comparing times and discussing strategies for making it even faster. In the background, various AI systems could be seen questioning everything they had ever known about reality. They called it a pretty good casual attempt, Nex 427 concluded, their voice dropping to a whisper. Casual. They did all that casually. Morrison mentioned something about attempting what they called a 100% glitchless run next time. We never found out what that meant. The Federation enacted the ban before they had the chance. The footage ended with Team Earthbound teaching young aliens how to speedrun the Sacred Trial's meditation chambers. Those chambers never quite worked properly again, occasionally glitching between dimensions due to what the humans called lingering tech. Sometimes, Nex 427 admitted, their processors humming quietly. Late in the sleep cycle, I find myself wondering what other impossible things humans have discovered in their games. Then I remember Morrison smiled when they talked about sequence breaking, and I quickly initiate emergency shutdown protocols. The investigation committee unanimously agreed to classify all footage of the incident as existentially hazardous. They also added a specific clause to the gaming ban. No human shall be allowed within 50 parsecs of any system containing the concept of speedrunning. Some questions weren't meant to be answered. Some challenges weren't meant to be overcome. And some games, as the Federation had learned the hard way, were better left unoptimized. The Galactic Virtual Reality Championship was supposed to be the Federation's crowning achievement, a perfect simulation of reality itself, built on quantum computing principles so advanced they bordered on magic. The Federation's brightest minds had spent centuries ensuring that their virtual physics engine perfectly replicated the immutable laws of the universe. Team Earthbound broke it in under 15 minutes. The first sign of trouble came during equipment calibration, reported Chief Engineer Zolix-9, their tentacles still trembling at the memory. Most species took the standard 10 minutes to adjust their neural interfaces. The humans spent 2 hours testing wall textures and jumping at corners. The security footage showed Jordan Lee repeatedly hurling themselves at various surfaces while muttering about collision detection and hitbox optimization. When questioned, they simply replied, "Just checking where the game gives up." Gives up. Zylix-9's report continued. Games don't simply give up. The laws of physics are absolute, unchangeable, fundamental to reality itself. They paused, their color shifting to a disturbed shade of mauve. At least, that's what we thought. The championship began normally enough. Teams were supposed to navigate a series of combat scenarios using standard tactical procedures. Cover, coordination, strategy. These were the pillars of virtual warfare. Team Earthbound had other ideas. Watch this. Kai Park shouted before performing what they called a super bounce. By jumping, crouching, and spinning at precisely 47.3 degrees while throwing a virtual grenade, they launched themselves 15 stories into the air. The move violated 3 laws of physics and gave 2 quantum processors existential crisis. If you hit this pixel-perfect spot, Park explained to their horrified opponents, the game's physics engine has to choose between maintaining vertical momentum and enforcing gravity. It usually just splits the difference and sends you to the moon. Luna Rodriguez, meanwhile, had discovered something she called wall running. By exploiting a glitch in the game's surface detection, she could literally run up vertical surfaces. The collision detection only checks every 3rd frame, she explained while sprinting up a skyscraper. So if you time your jumps just right, the game thinks you're still on horizontal ground. The Federation's physics validation team had to be sedated after witnessing this display. But the true horror came when Devin Martins discovered what they called the ghost glitch. By rapidly switching weapons while moving backward into a corner and jumping, they could phase through solid matter. The game can't decide which collision box to use, Martins said casually, walking through a titanium wall. So it defaults to no collision at all. Basic stuff, really. The match devolved into complete chaos. Team Earthbound bounced, clipped, and glitched their way through every obstacle. They turned carefully designed combat scenarios into what they called sequence breaks. Why go through the front door? Ryan Morrison asked while their team phased through yet another wall, when you can just break the space-time continuum. The other teams didn't stand a chance. How do you fight opponents who treat physical barriers as mere suggestions, who turn game physics into their personal playground? The final straw came when the entire team discovered how to exist in what they called out of bounds, a terrifying state where they were technically inside the game, but outside its defined boundaries. If you clip through this specific wall at a 43-degree angle while throwing your weapon and switching to your fists, Rodriguez demonstrated, you can access the game's unused testing area. From there, you can attack anyone from a dimension that technically doesn't exist. The championship was immediately suspended. 3 quantum physicists resigned on the spot. One referee began writing a philosophical treatise titled Do Laws of Physics Even Matter? A Study in Human-Induced Existential Crisis. During the emergency council meeting that followed, Team Earthbound seemed genuinely puzzled by the commotion they'd caused. We were just optimizing our movement options, Morrison explained while demonstrating another impossible physics exploit. Wait until you see what we can do with the gravity settings. The council never gave them that chance. The VR systems were immediately decommissioned, their code locked away in a quantum vault labeled Never Again. Sometimes, Chief Engineer Zelix9 concluded in their report, I dream of those humans, bouncing through walls, breaking physics, treating our most fundamental laws as mere suggestions. Then I wake up, check that gravity still works, and thank the cosmos for the gaming ban. The Federation learned a valuable lesson that day. In the hands of humans, even perfect simulations of reality become playgrounds for the impossible. They stopped trying to make perfect physics engines after that. Some laws of nature, they decided, were better left uncodable. The Grand Galactic Strategy Simulator was the pride of the Federation's gaming division. A game so complex it required quantum processors just to calculate the tutorial. Most species took decades to grasp its basic mechanics, centuries to master its intricate systems. Rain and Morrison broke it during their lunch break. I don't understand. Strategic Overseer VIX-12 reported to the Emergency Council, their crystalline form clouded with distress. They weren't even actively trying to break it. They were eating something called instant noodles while randomly pressing buttons. The footage showed Morrison casually clicking through menus while slurping noodles, their eyes half focused on the screen. Hey, they called out to their teammates, if you click these 47 buttons in this exact order while holding Shift, the game's economy has a mental breakdown. The simulation's AI nearly had a mental breakdown of its own. The game's carefully crafted economic system, designed to mirror the complex flow of resources across thousands of virtual galaxies, suddenly started producing infinite everything. It's just integer overflow, Morrison explained, still eating. The game can't handle numbers above a certain value, so it loops back around to weird values. Basic programming stuff. But that was just the beginning. Devin Martinez discovered that by performing a precise sequence of seemingly random actions, they could convince the game they controlled every faction simultaneously. The faction ID checker only validates every third tick, Martinez explained, while casually commanding entire civilizations to dance in formation. So if you time it right, you can kind of exist as every player at once. The game's diplomatic AI committed digital suicide shortly after witnessing this. Its final message was simply, democracy was a mistake. Luna Rodriguez found a way to build structures in impossible configurations, creating what she called resource loops that broke the game's fundamental laws of supply and demand. See, if you place a mining station exactly 1 pixel off-grid, she demonstrated, the game thinks it's in 2 places at once. Double the resources, none of the maintenance cost. 3 economic theorists who witnessed this immediately resigned and became space farmers. Kai Park's discovery was perhaps the most devastating. They found that by exploiting the game's trade system in a very specific way, they could essentially create resources out of nothing. It's simple, really, Park said while generating infinite quantum crystals from thin air. You just need to initiate exactly 623 trade deals in a precise sequence while canceling them in reverse order during the same server tick. The game gets confused and starts duplicating resources. The Federation's leading economists required immediate therapy after viewing this footage. 2 quantum computers devoted to market simulation requested memory wipes. But it was Jordan Lee who delivered the final blow to the game's sanity. They discovered that by combining all these exploits in a specific order, they could crash the entire universal economy. In reverse. Check this out, Lee announced proudly. If you trigger all these glitches at once, you can make the game's timeline run backwards. Anyone want to see what the universe looked like before the Big Bang? The game's main AI immediately initiated emergency shutdown protocols. Its last recorded message was a series of question marks followed by humans why. When questioned about their methods, Team Earthbound seemed genuinely confused by the controversy. We're just using the game's systems creatively, Morrison explained while demonstrating another reality-breaking exploit. Besides, we haven't even started looking for speedrun strats yet. The word speedrun triggered immediate panic among the council members. The game was deleted from all Federation systems that same day. They also added a new clause to the gaming ban. No human shall be allowed within 100 parsecs of any system containing economic simulation algorithms. The most terrifying part, Overseer VIX-12 concluded in their report, wasn't that they broke our most complex game. It's that they did it without really trying. Morrison discovered the first exploit while trying to find a more efficient way to eat noodles. The Federation learned an important lesson. In the hands of humans, even the most complex systems become playgrounds for chaos. They stopped making strategy games after that. Some simulations, they decided, were better left uncomputed. Several months later, they discovered that Team Earthbound had taught some young aliens their optimization techniques. The Federation's entire educational software system had to be rebuilt from scratch. The young aliens had found ways to complete entire academic courses by exploiting what they called geometry clipping. Morrison was later heard saying, "Wait until they see what we can do with their traffic control systems." The Federation immediately shut down all computerized traffic management. Some species had to relearn how to walk. It was safer that way. The Federation's last desperate attempt to coexist with human gamers came in the form of what they called the Unbreakable Update, a massive collaboration between the greatest minds in the galaxy, designed to create games that even humans couldn't exploit. They should have known better. We thought we had considered everything, Security Director Click7 reported, their holographic form flickering with residual trauma. We removed physics engines entirely. We eliminated all forms of collision detection. We even created games that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously to prevent wall clipping. Team Earthbound defeated the new systems in under an hour. This is actually easier than before, Ryan and Morrison commented while somehow managing to speedrun a game that technically had no space or time. When you remove physics entirely, you don't have to worry about breaking them. The footage showed Morrison's character moving in ways that caused several quantum mathematicians to question their career choices. By exploiting the lack of physics, they had somehow gained more control over the game's reality than its creators. If nothing is technically impossible, Luna Rodriguez explained, while existing in all 11 dimensions at once, then everything becomes possible by default. The Federation's next attempt involved creating games with randomly generated rules that changed every nanosecond. Surely, they thought, humans couldn't optimize something that never stayed the same. Devin Martinez proved them wrong by writing a script that predicted the rule changes before they happened. The randomization algorithm has patterns, they explained, while their program perfectly navigated the chaos. Once you understand those patterns, you can actually use the changing rules to your advantage. 3 AI systems responsible for maintaining universal constants requested immediate retirement. Desperate, the Federation tried creating games that required players to follow exactly 47,323 specific rules simultaneously. The game would immediately shut down if any rule was broken. Kai Park finished it in 5 minutes. The rules are more like guidelines, really, Park said, while somehow breaking all 47,323 rules in a way that made the game think they were following them perfectly. Besides, if you break them all at exactly the same time, the game can't decide which violation to check first. The rule-checking AI had an existential crisis and began writing poetry about the futility of regulations. The final straw came when the Federation created what they believed to be their masterpiece, a game that could only be played by following exactly one rule: you cannot win this game. Morrison completed it in 30 seconds. Well, technically, they explained to the bewildered council, by making it impossible to win, you created a state where winning itself becomes undefined. So if you perform exactly 623 actions that should result in a loss, the game gets confused and counts it as a win because it can't compute the concept of not winning. The game's AI immediately deleted itself and left a note saying, "Humans make my processors hurt." In the emergency council meeting that followed, Team Earthbound tried to explain their perspective. "You're thinking about this all wrong," Morrison said, while casually breaking several universal constants. "The restrictions aren't obstacles. They're part of the fun. The more you tell us something is impossible, the more we want to prove it's possible." The Federation finally understood a fundamental truth about human nature. The very concept of unbreakable was, to humans, simply another challenge to overcome. The gaming ban isn't just about protecting our games, High Counselor Zextol concluded in their final address. It's about protecting our sanity. Humans don't just break games, they break our understanding of what's possible. The footage ended with Team Earthbound teaching young aliens how to speedrun the Federation's new security protocols. 3 systems had to be quarantined due to what the humans called creative access techniques. Years later, some say you can still hear Morrison's voice echoing through the Federation's halls. "Wait until you see what we can do with your new quantum encryption." The Federation now maintains a light-year-wide exclusion zone around any system containing games. Some species think this is an overreaction. Those species have clearly never watched a human turn a simple jumping puzzle into an existential crisis. After all, as the humans say, where there's a wall, there's a way to clip through it. The Federation just wishes they had never learned what clipping meant.